negotiations clearly have gone awry. This has been embarrassing. Vice President Kelsey Plum and Executive Board Committee member Brianna Stewart went and blasted Nneka Ogwumike and Terry Carmichael Jackson. And I still believe they both need to be fired for the way this thing has gone.
That's not frustration. That's a public execution. When board members start writing letters blasting their own union leadership, you're not watching a negotiation anymore. You're watching a complete organizational collapse. And what makes this particularly damaging is the timing. March 10th deadline looming. Players divided. And now the entire world gets to watch the WNBA Players Association tear itself apart from the inside.
All right. Here it says, this is a statement from today from the executive committee. In every CBA negotiation, the goal of the league and teams is to divide the players. These negotiations are no different. We remain united and focused on delivering a transformational CBA for all members of this union and are committed to negotiating.
Here's what they want you to believe. That statement reads like a unified front, right? Executive committee standing strong. Players united, trust in leadership. But that survey result they're citing, that 84% rejection rate, it raises more questions than it answers. Because if the players are so unified, why did Kelsey Plum and Brianna Stewart feel the need to write a 3-page letter expressing concerns about communication breakdowns? You don't air internal disputes publicly unless private channels have completely failed.
Nneka Ogwumike. When you say the league and the team's goal is to divide the players, I don't think they had to do anything to divide the players. I think you guys, as leaders, have done a poor job, which is why a bunch of the players have come out and said you guys are being selfish and greedy and they want to play and you guys aren't doing it. But here it says they took a WNBPA survey on the league proposal. The question is, would you accept the league's proposal?
Watch how quickly they pivoted to that survey. The question itself reveals the problem. Would you accept 50% of net revenue, which equals less than 15% of gross revenue, in an 8-year deal? That's not a neutral question. That's a question designed to get a specific answer. Because when you frame it as less than 15% of gross, you're already telling players how to feel about it. A competent union leadership would present multiple scenarios, explain the math behind net versus gross revenue, show projections for what each option means for player salaries over time. This looks like they're trying to justify a position they've already taken rather than genuinely gathering member input.
NBA has emerged victorious in its battle against the Players Association. While you have not read that there has been a settlement, while you have not seen an agreement and the start of the WNBA season, I am guaranteeing you that Adam Silver and the other WNBA owners will emerge victorious from this negotiation because the WNBPA, the Players Association, is an outright mess.
And this is where David Sampson's analysis cuts through all the noise. He's been on the management side of these negotiations. He knows exactly what Adam Silver is doing right now. That March 10th deadline wasn't pulled from a scheduling necessity. It was a strategic pressure point, designed to expose exactly what we're seeing now. Fractures in union solidarity. When management sees board members publicly questioning their own leadership, they don't have to do anything else. The union is doing their work for them.
It used to be so natural for us to talk, but used-to-bes don't count anymore. What's going on here? Adam Silver stands up and says there's a deadline on March 10th. You better get a deal done or we're not going to be able to get the season underway and we're going to have a real problem. All of a sudden, the players' union seems fractured. First, you get a story that comes out is now, while they had voted to approve a strike, now there could be some dissension in the ranks about whether or not they should call for a strike. There seems to be some dissension within the ranks about whether what the WNBA is offering at the table should be accepted in large part so that they can get their season.
The letter from Plum and Stewart changes everything. These aren't fringe players complaining. Kelsey Plum is the union's vice president. Brianna Stewart is on the executive board committee. When your own leadership structure starts publicly expressing concerns about communication and progress, that's not a disagreement about strategy. That's a vote of no confidence. And the fact that this letter made it to ESPN means someone wanted it public. Either Plum and Stewart leaked it themselves, or someone else in the union wanted the world to know there's internal discord.
They're legging it, and they use one of those expanders that open your chest cavity and expose your beating heart. You certainly do not write a letter that you know is going to get leaked. For those of you who are going to complain about leaks, inside the industry, the sports industry, every email we write, every letter we write, every correspondence with the fan or with the commissioner or with a fellow owner, you are taught in president's school.
Here's what makes this particularly damaging for the union's negotiating position. Sampson's right about one fundamental rule in labor negotiations. You never ever let the other side know you're divided, because the moment management sees cracks, they stop making concessions. Why would they? If the union might implode on its own, if players are getting desperate to start the season, if board members are questioning leadership, management just has to wait. Let the pressure build. Let the deadline approach. Let the players turn on each other.
ESPN received this private communication, and I'm about as shocked that today is Wednesday because yesterday was Tuesday. Inside the letter, we are frustrated that we have not made more progress as we near the March 10th deadline. Game over. Do you know that March 10th is not a real deadline? I'm just going to make sure that we're clear about that. When Adam Silver stood up after the All-Star game during his media availability during All-Star weekend.
And notice what's happening with that March 10th deadline. It's working exactly as intended. Players are panicking, board members are writing letters. The union called an emergency meeting to address internal concerns instead of focusing on negotiations with the league. Adam Silver created a fake deadline, and the union is treating it like it's real. That's not just a negotiating mistake. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of leverage. The league wants to play basketball. The league needs content for their broadcast partners. The league has expansion plans that require a functioning season, but right now, they're acting like they hold all the cards because the union is showing them they're right.
Is he thought to himself, correctly so, if I finally put a deadline out there and I'm hearing some rumblings from my insiders, that could fracture this union. And it played out exactly as Adam Silver would want it. The union was forced to call a players' meeting last night, according to sources that ESPN cited. The union now is going to address the issues raised in the letter by Plum and Stewart. It's like doing the Snoopy dance if you're management and the union is getting together when we're this close to a potential fake deadline of March 10th and they're getting to.
Look at the specific language in that union statement again. The goal of the league and teams is to divide the players. That's deflection. Yes, management always tries to create divisions in union negotiations. That's standard practice. But effective union leadership doesn't let those divisions happen. They communicate clearly with members. They present options transparently. They build consensus before taking public positions. What we're seeing here suggests the opposite happened. Terry Jackson and Nneka Ogwumike appear to have taken a hardline position, presented it to members as the only acceptable path forward, and now board members are pushing back because they weren't part of that decision-making process. The survey question itself proves this point. By the time they asked players whether to accept less than 15% of gross revenue, they'd already framed the league's offer as inadequate. They didn't present it as 50% of net revenue with projections showing salary increases of X% over 8 years. They presented it in the least favorable terms possible, then asked for validation of their rejection. That's not leadership gathering input, that's leadership seeking cover for a decision already made. And here's what nobody's talking about. What if that 84% rejection rate isn't real? What if Nneka Ogwumike and Terry Jackson constructed that survey, got the results they wanted by framing the question negatively, and now they're using it to claim player support? We have no way to verify those numbers. We don't know how many players responded. We don't know the exact wording of all the questions. We don't know if there were other options presented. We just have a statement claiming 84% support, released right after board members publicly questioned leadership. The timing is suspicious. Plum and Stewart write a letter expressing concerns about communication and progress. Within hours, the union releases a statement claiming overwhelming member support. That's crisis management, not genuine democratic process. Now let's talk about what this means for the actual negotiations. The league's offer of 50% of net revenue isn't as insulting as the union is making it sound. Net revenue accounts for operating costs. In a league that's been subsidized by the NBA for its entire existence, that's not an unreasonable starting point. The question becomes, what's included in those costs? How is net revenue calculated? What happens as the league becomes more profitable? Those are the details that matter. Those are the negotiations that should be happening. But instead, we're watching a public relations disaster where union leadership is fighting with their own board members while the deadline approaches. Breanna Stewart and Kelsey Plum aren't wrong to be frustrated. 4 years. They've had 4 years since the last CBA to prepare for this moment. 4 years to build consensus among players about priorities. 4 years to develop a negotiating strategy that accounts for the league's financial reality while pushing for meaningful improvements. And according to their letter, they weren't kept informed about progress until January. That's organizational malpractice. Here's what's going to happen. Adam Silver and the league are going to wait. They're going to let that March 10th deadline pass if necessary. They're going to watch the union continue to fracture. And when players start really panicking about missing paychecks, about losing a season, about damaging the league's momentum right when it's finally building mainstream attention, the union is going to crack. They'll accept something close to the current offer, claim victory on a few minor points, and Terry Jackson will probably lose her job within a year, because that's what happens when union leadership loses the confidence of their own board members. That's what happens when you prioritize posturing over communication. That's what happens when you treat a fake deadline as real and let management control the narrative. The WNBA players deserve better than this. They deserve leadership that communicates transparently, builds genuine consensus, and understands basic negotiating strategy. Instead, they're watching their own union implode in real time while the league sits back and waits for them to accept whatever's on the table. So here's my question for you. If you were a WNBA player right now, would you have confidence in Nneka Ogwumike and Terry Jackson to represent your interests? Because based on what we're seeing, based on their own board members publicly questioning their leadership, based on the strategic disaster this negotiation has become, I wouldn't. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more honest analysis of what's really happening in the WNBA, hit subscribe, because we're going to keep following this story as it develops.